Today we are going to see histology. The first histology topic, that is histology of tissues, epithelia. We are going to see mainly the epithelial tissue and the glands. Let's begin. So we are going to define a tissue. So what is a tissue? Tissue is collection of or aggregation of similar type of cells, or the cells which have similar function, or they do almost the same function. So they can be called as tissue. A group of it are called as tissue. There are four basic tissues: epithelial tissue, connective tissue, muscular tissue, nervous tissue. Here, diagram is showing a connective tissue where there are a lot of cells. They are together. They are seen together, and those are called as tissue. Here in this class, we will be seeing mainly the epithelial tissue. We will see all these things slowly. The first one, epithelial tissue. So how will you define the epithelium? So you should know that epithelium is a basic tissue of the body. And this one is the epithelium. This is epithelium. This is a section of skin, and this is epidermis. So epidermis is an epithelium. It consists of cells arranged as continuous sheets. So it can be seen as a continuous sheet of cells, where it can be a single layer cell or it can be multiple layer. This diagram shows that the cells are arranged in multiple layer. So it can be in multiple layer sometimes, or it can be in a single layer. Now cells, all the cells, they are going to rest on a support, a membrane. These cells, the cells which are here, they are resting. These, not all the cells actually, the basal cells, the cells which are seen at the basement or at the bottom, they are going to rest on a membrane, and this membrane is called as basement membrane. Here again, this is basement membrane where the basement cells are, or the basal cells are resting. So this is basement membrane here, this one, basement membrane. Now epithelial tissues are avascular. So look at this diagram. The blood vessels are going to reach below the epidermis or the epithelium. It is not going to cross the epithelium. But still, the epithelium is a living tissue. It needs nutrition. How it gets nutrition? If there is no blood vessels, it cannot get the nutrition. But it's possible through a process called as diffusion, because the blood vessels are reaching at the bottom of the epithelium. So through this area, diffusion can take place, and the epithelium can get its nutritions. It has a high capability of regeneration. The cells, they are on continuous process of regeneration. It means that the cells which are placed here at the basal part or the bottom of the epithelium, these cells can multiply and it can give rise to new cells. So when we see the epithelium, especially an epithelium like this, we will see that the epithelium is continuous process of epithelium is under continuous process of regeneration. The cells multiply, generate at the basal level, they go to the next level, they go to the next level, ultimately they are here at the top, then they get shed off. The cells get multiplied at the bottom. These cells can regenerate, or it can have the property of mitosis. They just grow and multiply, and they push the cells to the top. and ultimately these cells get shut off. So these are some of the things regarding epithelium. So this is the epithelium, this one. Basically, you're seeing the skin. Skin has got two parts, epidermis and the dermis. Epidermis is an epithelium. What are the functions of it? Epithelial tissue forms boundary layer between body and the external environment. The best example is skin. So skin is making a boundary between the layers of the cells, or it is going to make a differentiation between the body and the external environment. It is a barrier. Not only that, it also going to line the body cavities. Body cavities. You have body cavities like chest, thorax, abdomen. These are body cavities. Inside this body cavities, it is lined by epithelium. So epithelium can be seen in the outer aspect, like skin. Example is skin, and other area, the body cavities like abdominal cavity, chest cavity, pelvic cavity, and also the tubes. We have many tubes: a windpipe, trachea, right, and the food pipe, esophagus. These are lined by epithelium. The function is protective. So one of the main function is protection. For example, skin is a protective function, whereas some structures like in organs like kidney, intestines, the function is absorption. We will take an example of epithelia of intestine. Intestines, we have small intestine. So we'll take an example of small intestine, the inner aspect of the small intestine. So intestine is like a tube. So inside the tube, it is lined by epithelium. So the lining is epithelium. So they are absorptive in functions. So whatever food you take, that is getting digested and the nutrients are getting absorbed. This figure shows you epithelium of kidney. Here the next example is kidney. Kidney is having a lot of tubules inside, which are basically the functional tissue of the, or the functional unit of the kidney is called as nephrons. Nephrons are having a lot of tubes. So if you look at these tubes, inside the tube, it's a cross section. It's taken. It's not a cross section. It is a section where you can see the interior of the nephron, the tubules. There are epithelium. There are cells which are lining it. So these epithelium can be seen in the kidney, in the intestine. Now epithelium act as a barrier, like in skin and urinary bladder. Urinary bladder, look at the urinary bladder. Inside the urinary bladder, we will see that it is lined by epithelium. So urinary bladder, as you know, the function is to store the urine, and urine is noxious. It is having a lot of chemicals. So these chemicals should not be absorbed into the body. So there we need some barrier. So the epithelium, which is lining the urinary bladder, is having that function. So that resist the absorption of water and toxic substance. So this is specifically happening in the urinary bladder. So it act as a barrier. So we are seeing the functions of epithelium. Now, epithelium of certain parts of nephron involved in excretion of harmful metabolites. So again, some part of the nephron is a uh, big structure, in fact. So there are different parts of nephron. In some part of the nephron, we will see the epithelium will function as that of excretion. Excretory function is also there for the epithelium in some part of kidney, nephron. Other function is secretion. This happens in intestine. Intestine, this is an epithelium of the intestine. There are a lot of cells in the intestine, and there are specialized cells which are called as secretory cells, and they are specifically called as goblet cells. Goblet cells here, this is goblet cell, this is again goblet cell. You can see the epithelium here. These cells are secretory in function, in the sense they secrete mucus. Mucus is thick fluid that is produced by goblet cells, and mucus is very much needed in the intestine for the movements of the food that you eat. So that is another function of the epithelium. So these are some of the functions of epithelium. Now, what are the types of epithelium? Epithelium can be classified according to different categories according to the shape, arrangement, and specialization of their free surface. So it can classify according to the shape of the cell, how the shape it is, what shape it is, arrangement of the cell, how it is arranged, and specialization of their free surface. On the free surface, this is the free surface of the epithelium. This is the basal layer of the epithelium. This is a free surface. This is a free surface. This is a basal layer. So sometimes epithelium you may see some modifications at the apical level or the free surface. So based upon these three things, we are going to classify epithelium. So first classification is according to the number of layers. So how many layers it has. So epithelium is having a lot of cells. So depending on the number of layers of the cell, it is going to get classified. The first one is simple epithelium. Here simple epithelium is very simple. As the name suggests, all the cells are resting on basement membrane. So there is a basement membrane here and the cells are resting on the basement membrane and they're single layered. Next classification or next type is stratified epithelium. Stratified epithelium, as the name suggests, it has got stratification. In the sense, it has got more than one layer. This epithelium is stratified epithelium. There is a single layer initially which is resting on the basement membrane, but the cells which are above it are not going to rest on basement membrane. They are resting on these cells. Look at the other cells. They are resting on these cells. So these are multiple layered epithelium or stratified epithelium. This is simple epithelium where you have a single layer of cells. All are touching basement membrane. Here the scenario is different. The basal cells are resting on the basement membrane. Other cells are not touching the basement membrane. And the other one, which you can say that is pseudo stratified. Pseudo stratified. So this term is very interesting. Pseudo stratified. Pseudo means false. So it is a false stratified epithelium. Or other words, it looks like stratified epithelium, but it is not stratified epithelium. This is pseudo stratified epithelium. Here, all the cells are touching the basement membrane. This is basement membrane. All the cells are touching the basement membrane. But the length of the cell is different. This cell is very long. This is short. This is long. This is long. This is short. So the length, the height of the cell is different. And arrangement of the nucleus is also different. This cell, the nucleus is at the top, but for the short cell, the nucleus is here. So here it is in the midline. Here the midway, right? Here it is the top, here it is again at the bottom. So because of the change in the length of the cell, the nucleus position also changes. So when you look at through the microscope, it looks that the nucleus, because of the position of the nucleus, which is at two levels, some are in the top, some are at the bottom, it looks like that of a stratified epithelium. Because stratified epithelium, the nucleus position is at different levels. Some are at the top, some are at the bottom, some are at the midway. So because when you see through the microscope, the cell boundaries, this is cell boundaries are not so visible. The main thing that you focus is on the nucleus, because nucleus is very well visible, but the cell boundary may not be very visible. So when you look at through the microscope, this epithelium, even though it is a simple epithelium, because all the cells are touching the basement membrane, but because of the position of the nucleus, which are at different levels, it looks as if it is a stratified epithelium. But actually, it is not a stratified epithelium, it is a pseudo stratified epithelium. So it is one other type. And the next one is transitional epithelium. Transitional epithelium is a special type of epithelium, but actually speaking, transitional epithelium is, or it can be classified as a stratified epithelium because it has more than one layer of cells. This is transitional epithelium. Their basal cells are here, and the next layer, and the next layer. So this is actually a stratified epithelium, but it is a special type of epithelium because it is seen only in some areas. Especially, it is related to the urinary organs. urinary organs. So transitional epithelium is a special type of epithelium, but remember it is a stratified epithelium. It can change its shape. So when it is stretched, it can change the shape. That is why we call it as a transitional epithelium. So basically we have simple epithelium, stratified epithelium, then a pseudo-stratified epithelium, and the next variety is transitional epithelium, which can be classified under stratified epithelium. Now, based on shape of the cells, we are going to classify the epithelium. Now, we are going to see the shape of the cell, how it is seen. Simple squamous epithelium. Here, the cells are flat cells. This is a simple squamous epithelium. So basically, you should know first we are talking about simple epithelium, and here we are going to talk about stratified epithelium. Simple epithelium because you have only single layer. Stratified epithelium, if you have more than one layer, we call it as stratified epithelium. So depending on the shape of it, it is simple squamous. It can be simple squamous. So this is simple squamous. The shape of the cell is flat. Then simple cuboidal. It can be a single layer cuboidal cells. So cuboidal cells, simple cuboidal. Simple columnar here, simple because it has got only one layer, and the cell shape it is columnar, pillar like cells. So they are classified in this way: simple squamous, cuboidal, columnar. Now coming to the stratified epithelium, again we can see three types of epithelium here. Stratified epithelium, stratified squamous. This is stratified squamous. Stratified cuboidal. Stratified cuboidal is here. Stratified columnar. Stratified columnar. Now, when we say this stratified squamous, so this is stratified epithelium because we have got many layers. But why we call it as stratified squamous? Because squamous means the flat cells. So here we are seeing which cells are, I mean, mainly basically we are seeing the type of cell which are seen at top, the top here. These cells, it is a stratified epithelium, so it can have a lot of cells. But basically the top cells, these cells, the cells which are there in the upper level, the shape of the cell, look at this, they are flat. So that is why we call it as it's a stratified squamous. Imagine this, the layer which are here, if it is a columnar, we call it as stratified columnar. If it is cuboidal, we call it as stratified cuboidal. Because you should know one thing: stratified squamous epithelium, when I say stratified squamous, the upper layer should be squamous in shape. Stratified columnar, the upper layer should be columnar. Stratified cuboidal, the upper layer should be cuboidal. That's the basic thing regarding that. Because stratified squamous, you will see the basal layer, they may be of different shape. You can see here it is columnar, then it changes its shape, ultimately it becomes squamous. So you should remember that fact. Now coming towards all this epithelium in detail, simple squamous epithelium, as you know, it is a single layer of flat cells. So you can have flat cells which are single layered. Nucleus is oval or flat. The shape of the nucleus is oval and flat, and it is positioned at the center of the cell. So it is at the center of the cell, the center of the cell. So it is always important that you remember the nucleus shape and the position of the nucleus, because I said already that in the microscope we are going to see mainly the nucleus. So we should know the nucleus of the cell. We are not going to see the cell boundary very clearly, but the nucleus will be very visible. So you have to identify the epithelium by seeing the shape and the position of the nucleus. Okay. Uh, the epithelium, the simple squamous epithelium, also lines the heart, the inner aspect of the heart, blood vessels, lymphatics. So blood vessels are like a tube. The inner aspect of the tube here, the blood vessel is seen. The inner aspect of the blood vessel is lined by epithelium, simple squamous epithelium. Here we call it as endothelium. So the simple squamous epithelium which is lining the blood vessels are called as endothelium. Similarly, simple squamous epithelium are going to line the body cavities. I said already, epithelium can be seen inside the body cavity, lining the body cavities. So here, simple squamous epithelium is going to cover or going to line the body cavities, and also surfaces of viscera, the outer aspect of the viscera. For example, liver, the outer aspect of the liver, aspect of the kidney, they are lined by again epithelium. So here this epithelium, simple squamous epithelium, is called as mesothelium. So basically endothelium, mesothelium, all are simple squamous epithelium, but depending on the position where it is located, the name changes. The function is helps in rapid transport of substance. So it is going to have a transporting function and filtration of fluids, diffusion of gases, osmosis. Now here it's a blood vessel, and we already said that the inner aspect of the blood vessel is lined by simple squamous epithelium, and the blood vessel is carrying blood, and these are very close to the tissues which are nearby. So the tissues needs oxygen, and the whatever carbon dioxide it has to be transported into the blood. So whatever oxygen the tissue needs which are nearby, imagine you have the tissues nearby, they drain the oxygen, they get the oxygen from the blood which is flowing inside. So how the oxygen reaches into the tissue, they the oxygen is going to pass through the cell. Okay, similarly the carbon dioxide, whatever waste material it has, it is going to pass through to the blood through the cell. It is, remember, it is not between the cell, it is through the cell. So that is the importance of having a flat cells here. Remember, if you have, just think that you have a columnar cell here, a big cell here, tall cell, the transportation would be difficult. But here, since it is flat, the transportation is very simple. So the shape of the cell always correlate with the functional aspect. So there's an example here. I said simple squamous epithelium, they are flat cells, they are lining the blood vessels, so it is easy for the transportation of the gases. So that's it. Now coming to the simple cuboidal. So this is how it looks, simple cuboidal, and this is how it looks in a histological diagram. So length and breadth of the cells are same. So the length, so it is like a square shaped cells. Sectional view appears cuboidal in shape. So this is a sectional view, it looks cuboidal in shape. Nuclei are round shape and centrally placed. So they are placed at the center. Now examples where it is seen. It is seen in lining follicle of thyroid gland. So we have a gland in the neck region called as thyroid gland. So inside the thyroid gland, this is a thyroid gland. Inner aspect of the thyroid gland can be seen. It's a follicle of the thyroid gland. It is lined by the cuboidal cells, and also lines ducts of exocrine gland. Exocrine glands are of many types. Salivary glands is an example of exocrine gland. Certain ducts and tubules of kidneys. Again, the kidney is lined by simple cuboidal cells. The function is secretion and absorption. So it has got two functions, secretory function. So it can secrete something into this, or it can absorb. So these functions can be seen in simple cuboidal. Coming to the next layer, next epithelium, that is simple columnar epithelium. Simple columnar epithelium, as the name suggests, they are tall cells. They are tall cells. Their width is narrow, but height is more. Nuclei are elongated and located in lower half of the cell. Here it looks like at the center of the cell, but it is not exactly. Look at this diagram. Here the cells are at the bottom. I'm sorry, the nucleus are at the bottom of the cell. You can see that elongated nucleus, which are located at the bottom. This is the basement membrane. The cells are resting on the basement membrane. Here you can see very clearly the cell boundary is not visible. You are not able to make out the differences between the cells, but you can very well see the nucleus shape and position in relation with the cell. That's why I said always remember the shape and the size of the nucleus. So it is at the bottom of the cell, elongated nucleus. You can have some surface modifications. I said at the initial time that we have the surface. This is a surface where you can get some modifications. Some modifications can be seen here. In simple epithelia, we can have a modification that is called as cilia or microvilli. We will see what are cilia and microvilli in later classes. So this is a diagram where you can see the epithelia, simple columnar epithelia, and at the top of the epithelia, there are some projections, finger-like projections can be seen here. They are the cilia. So it is seen in some areas. of the body. So it is a modification which can be seen in the simple columnar epithelium. So it is not a must. It can have a simple epithelium like this, or it may have a modifications like this. Now, epithelium lining the gallbladder, GAT, uterine tube, etc. So these are usually seen in these areas: gallbladder, gastrointestinal tract, uterine tubes. Uterine tube is also called as fallopian tube. Function is secretion and absorption. So it can secrete some chemicals or it can absorb. That's why I said it is seen in the gastrointestinal tract, where the digested food has to be absorbed. The nutrients has to be absorbed from the digested food. So that is a function. Now, if you have a cilia at the top of the epithelium, simple columnar epithelium, a function is little different. Here, a movements of the cilia are possible. So a function is mainly in the respiratory tract. In the respiratory tract is nothing but it is a tract which starts from the nose, it ends with the lungs as a form of alveoli. So there we have epithelia with cilia. I said cilia are the surface modifications. So cilia, what it does, it moves the mucus. Always there is a production of the mucus inside the respiratory tract, and this mucus has to be thrown out. It has to be thrown out. So mucus cannot get lodged in the lungs. It has to be thrown outside. And you might have experienced it. It is coming. It used to come through the nose, mouth, and so on. So the movement of the mucus is done by the ciliary action. The cilia actually you know, beats the mucus towards the nose, towards the exterior. Similarly, this epithelium, the ciliary epithelium, also seen in the ovum, or I'm sorry, also seen in the uterine tube, where it allows the movement of the ovum, which is also important for the fertilization. So these are the two areas where you will see ciliated epithelium: respiratory tract and fallopian tube. The next one is stratified squamous. So here we are going to see stratified squamous. So I said already that stratified in the sense we have more than one layer, and let's see, it's squamous because the top layer, they are squamous in shape. That is why it is stratified squamous. Now, as we said, there are different layers. The basal layer, the basement membrane can be seen. The basal layer are resting on the basement membrane, and they are usually columnar or cuboidal. So here it is columnar in shape. Now the cells are moving to the top. Now intermediate cells are irregularly polyhedral in shape. So these intermediate cells, which can be seen as this area, they are polyhedral in shape. And as it moves, it is going to become flattened. As you can see here, it's going to be round, flattened. Initially it is round. Then as they go to the top layer, there is a flat cell, or flat cells can be seen at this. So it is a slow change that happens from base to the top. Initially it is columnar or cuboidal, then it becomes polyhedral, then it becomes round, then it becomes flat. But whatever it is at the top layer, it should be flat. Then we can call it as stratified squamous. Now superficial layer consists of thin squamous layer, as we said already. Basal cells replace surface cells as they are shed off. So this is showing the replication ability of the stratified epithelium. Now the cells slowly starts moving from base to top. So from the basal cell layer, initially it is columnar, they slowly migrate to the top polyhedral, then it becomes round cells, then it becomes flat. So there is a mitosis that can happen here at this level. And at the top, these cells, they slowly get shed off. They slowly get shed off. Again, the new cells come from below. Now these are going to be lining oral cavity and tongue. So your oral cavity, the mouth, the tongue, these are lined by stratified squamous epithelium. Now here one thing is written in the bracket, that is non-keratinized. So here we are going to see stratified squamous epithelium. There are two types of stratified squamous epithelium. One is non-keratinized, other one is keratinized. We will see what is the difference between non-keratinized and keratinized. But this one we are going to talk about non-keratinized. So these cells are seen, this type of epithelium are seen in mouth and tongue. Function is protection of deeper tissue. So the oral cavity, the function of oral cavity, you eat food and that has to be chewed in the mouth, and that you are swallowing it. So it is there's going to be a continuous wear and tear because the food that you eat, that is going to be placed here in the mouth, and the food is going to interact with the epithelium. So you're going to see a lot of interaction or wear and tear between the food and the epithelium. So some part of the epithelium may be lost during this process, but that has to be getting replaced from bottom. Just think that you have a simple epithelium in the mouth. What happens is that when you eat food and those epithelium get shut off and your body is exposed, but here it does not happen because you have stratified epithelium. Even if these cells are removed with the food or going along with the food, we have some other cells, they will get slowly replaced. So this is what happens. The best example is, I said it is seen in the tongue. Best example is when you, I think you might have experienced drinking hot tea. So when you drink hot tea, at that time you may have little difficulty, little lumpiness or difficulty in the tongue. But as the time progresses, the next day that won't be there because when you drink a hot tea, those cells get spoiled, dead, that get replaced slowly, and that's why the next day you will not have any issues. That is because you have a stratified squamous epithelium there. So there is a function, protection of the deeper areas. Now look at this diagram. This is showing you stratified squamous epithelium, but here an extra layer of the cell can be seen here. This layer, which is not seen in this. So this is called as a keratinized layer. That's why I said we have a stratified non-keratinized epithelium. We have a stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. So all the other layers, you can see here the flat cells can be seen here. Here also you can see the flat cell, but here there's an extra layer which is called as keratin. So let's see that. So the next layer is, next epithelium is stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. So this is keratinized epithelium, stratified squamous. Superficial cells becomes dead, dehydrated, and non-nucleated like scales. So here the difference is that the superficial layer, which is here, are the dead cells or dehydrated cells and non-nucleated cells. They don't have the nucleus. So they are like a scale, which is seen. The example here, the stratified squamous keratinized epithelium, the skin. Skin is an example of stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. So we'll see cells like this at the skin. Dead cells become hard and cornified. The dead cells slowly they become hard and cornified because I said the movement of the cell from base to the top. As the cells move, you can see these layers. We have the nucleus which are intact, but as it moves to this layer, the nucleus is lost and the cell is going to die. Epithelium of the skin is an example. Function, protection of deeper structures. So the function is similar to this. Protection of deeper structures, prevent absorption of water. So this is the main function of keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. Very important. Prevent absorption of water. So absorption of water is uh, prevented here. This is the reason. You just think you are going to swim in a swimming pool, and you just come out of that swimming pool. You will see that your skin is not absorbing any water. But if because of this epithelium, keratinized epithelium, because the skin is lined by stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. Suppose if you don't have this keratin layer in your skin, what happens is that you just go to the swimming pool, you come back, then you will be bloated. So this is the main function, preventing absorption of water. So keratin prevents dehydration of underlying tissue. It also prevents dehydration. So in both way, the water which is there at the outside that cannot come inside. Similarly, the water content what we have inside the body that also will not move outside. So this is the function of stratified squamous keratinized epithelium. So I think it's clear. Stratified squamous keratinized and non-keratinized. Non-keratinized is not having a keratin layer. Here you have a keratin layer. We will have a detailed explanation on these two cells in coming class. That time you will understand.